The 2003 NHL entry draft. After 3 rounds of teams picking players hoping to find their franchise's next superstar, one team was looking to plan ahead. A young Russian sensation by the name of Alex Ovechkin was born on September 7th, 1985. 2 days after the cutoff date to be a part of the 2003 draft class, so Ovechkin would most likely become the #1 overall pick the following year. Worried about the risk of not drafting a franchise caliber player like Ovechkin, the Panthers had a plan to try and draft him. Florida's general manager, Rick Dudley, attempted in 4 different rounds to draft Ovechkin, rounds 4 through 7, stating that if leap years were taken out of the picture, that Ovechkin would turn 18 4 days before his actual birthday, being eligible to be drafted. And obviously, this sounds so stupid, but desperate times calls for desperate measures. So what if, instead of being denied 4 different times, that maybe, just maybe, the commissioner gets fed up enough that he just lets the Panthers draft him to shut them up? Today, we'll be diving back in time and we'll try to find out what could happen if the Panthers were actually able to draft Alex Ovechkin in 2003. Since Florida picks Ovechkin in 2003, he can't be selected by Washington in 2004, so now the picks look like the following. The Capitals select Evgeny Malkin, but he doesn't play until 2006, so it kinda holds Washington back a few years. The Penguins will now select Blake Wheeler. The Chicago Blackhawks at 3 select Andrew Ladd, and the Hurricanes are stuck with Drew Stafford. Since the Panthers are better off with Ovi, Florida makes the playoffs but gets out early, so they go from pick 7 to pick 18. The Ducks pick Barker instead of Schmid, as Schmid will then go to the LA Kings. The final remains the same: Lightning, Flames, and we say the goal counts, and Calgary wins the cup because Jarome Iginla. Since the lockout happened, they actually did something called a weighed draft for the draft lottery this season, where they would distribute lottery balls under these guidelines. Teams were weighed based on playoff appearances in the last 3 completed seasons and first overall picks in the last 4 drafts. 3 lottery balls each were assigned to teams which had not qualified for any of those playoffs and received no first overall picks in that period. Teams which had 1 playoff appearance or first overall pick in those years were given 2 lottery balls, and all other teams only received 1. So instead of trying to guess who would take who, we said screw it and completely redrew the picks. In order to do so, we went to draftpicklottery.com and gave the same amount of balls to the teams that they got in real life. And so with that system in play, our new draft order will completely change the NHL into the 2010s and onwards. Our new top 3 features the Buffalo Sabres at the #1 pick, winning the Sidney Crosby sweepstakes, as the Penguins, get this, fall from pick #1 to pick #4. I kid you not. The 1 to 4 curse is even more realer than it already is. But at #2, the Vancouver Canucks will pick, and Edmonton picks at pick #3. So now the first round will go as following. The Sabres obviously select Sidney Crosby, but the Canucks pick Jack Johnson, meaning that at pick #3, the Edmonton Oilers pick Anze Kopitar. Penguins are stuck with Bobby Ryan. I'll put up the whole draft on the screen, their order and who they picked, but some noticeable picks are the following. At pick #7, the Thrashers select Carey Price. The Calgary Flames pick TJ Oshie at pick 16, and since Montreal can't draft Carey Price at pick 17, they get a guy by the name of Pooka. Dallas selects Matt Niskanen at pick 23, and right after them, the Ottawa Senators pick Marc-Edouard Vlasic. And since the Maple Leafs can't pick Rask or Carey Price all the way at pick 27, they get stuck with Ondrej Pavelec. Other noticeable picks in the later rounds include the Stars still drafting James Neal, the Predators getting Chris Russell, the Rangers drafting Nicholas Hjalmarsson, the Wild drafting Keith Yandel, and the Islanders picking Patrick Hornquist. The Panthers are still really good. Ovechkin and Onyekwe are a fantastic 1-2 punch with a steady goalie in Roberto Luongo, who they don't end up trading away. They make the playoffs once again. The Capitals, well, they'll just now get their first taste out of Evgeny Malkin, so once again, no playoffs for them. The Sabres with Crosby get a bit more competitive and actually make the playoffs. And the Thrashers with a core of Kovalchuk, Hossa, Mark Savard, and Carey Price are starting to look like the real deal. And with this year being the year that Edmonton actually went to the Stanley Cup final, adding Anze Kopitar pushes his team to the next level. Teams are looking more competitive while some are still lost, so the 06 draft order doesn't really seem to change as much. But the Islanders moved down from pick 7 to pick 11, and the Panthers, making the playoffs, go from 10 to, we'll say, 21. The Kings without Kopitar get worse and move up into the top 5. So the Blues still select Erik Johnson, but the Penguins, in desperate need of a center, select Jonathan Toews. The Blackhawks take Nicklas Backstrom, and the Capitals are stuck with Jordan Staal. Now, LA, with pick number 5, instead of Boston, select Phil Kessel, and Boston will select Kyle Oposo at 6. The Blue Jackets at 7 make a somewhat bold move at the time and pick Claude Giroux. The Coyotes take Brassard, while the Wild take Frolik, and at pick number 11, the Islanders take Michael Grabner. The Canucks at pick 12 will take Brian Little, and the Panthers at 21 draft Nick Foligno. The Thrashers end up snagging Jeff Petrie as well. That year's Stanley Cup final is completely changed now. We still say that the Oilers make it out of the West, but in the East, Eric Staal can't take the Canes to the final as they get stuck facing a Sabres team that now features Sidney Crosby and a complete lineup that even has a prime Ryan Miller in net. The 06 final is Kopitar, Pronger, and the Oilers versus Crosby, Afanajanov, and the Sabres. And even with a healthy Dwayne Rollison, we say that Sid the Kid wins the Cup in his first year in the league. The league now looks completely different. Out west, the Oilers, Red Wings, Flames, Ducks, and Stars look primed to compete with the young Chicago Blackhawks on the rise. But unlike the West, the East looks to be a complete force. The Thrashers and the Johnny Tays Penguins now look poised to make a playoff run, and teams like Ovechkin's Panthers, Crosby's Sabres, and the Senators and Hurricanes look to take over. The Capitals with Staal, Green, and Malkin are okay, but there's still work to be done, so no playoffs. The Islanders and Blue Jackets are also beginning to be competitive, and Montreal is reaping the benefits of Tuukka Rask. The Stanley Cup final that season was the Senators versus Ducks. But once again, I think things change. The whole Chris Pronger incident never happens, so he stays with Kopitar in Edmonton. The Senators, we say, still make the final, barely beating out the Sabres in the Eastern Conference final. Ovechkin's Panthers are good, but they still need some touches to compete and get out in the second round. In the West, without Pronger, Anaheim takes a step back, and the Stanley Cup final will be the Oilers versus Senators, an all-Canadian final. And with a healthy Dominik Hasek, the Senators win the Stanley Cup. At the draft, things change once again. The Flyers now win the Patrick Kane sweepstakes, picking him at number 1. The Coyotes pick JVR at 2, and with teams like Columbus and LA getting a bit more competitive, the Bruins land pick number 3 and Kyle Turris. Other picks feature Couturier to San Jose, Voracek to Montreal, McDonough to Washington, Shattenkirk to the Oilers via New York Islanders, Pacioretty to Calgary, and PK Subban to Florida as they go off the board at pick number 24. Just to let you know, that Detroit-Pittsburgh final isn't happening, as new teams are on the rise. Snagging PK Subban, this Panthers team looks poised for a deep run. The Capitals are finally legit with a main 3 of Malkin, Staal, and Ryan McDonough. The Sabres keep most of their core guys and are still looking solid, and with Patrick Kane now in the East with Philly, and the Penguins having a line of Blake Wheelers, Jonathan Toews, and Bobby Ryan, the East is officially stacked. The playoffs have Ottawa as the 1 seed, followed by Buffalo, Florida, Atlanta, Carolina, Washington, New York, Islanders, and Montreal. The West has the Oilers, Red Wings, Flames, Canucks, Stars, Sharks, Ducks, and Predators. This time around, we say that Ovi's Panthers can truly take the next step and advance to the Eastern Conference Final to face none other than the Atlanta Thrashers. Carey Price has really started to break out, and the young core in front of him are starting to burst out onto the scene as well. Out west, the Red Wings go to the Western Conference Final, but they get beat out by the San Jose Sharks, who put together a pretty good squad. The Stanley Cup Final will consist of the San Jose Sharks and the Florida Panthers. In 2008, in Vancouver, Luongo's stats are pretty good, so even with the young core in Florida, it's realistic to say they do make the final in 2008, but we give the edge to the Sharks, and they win a well-deserved cup after years of misery. Marleau and Jumbo Joe are officially champions. At the draft, since Marian Hossa never gets traded, the Penguins keep their pick and move up by a lot. With the first pick, Tampa still snags Stamkos, but St. Louis moves to 2 and still takes Pietrangelo. So Drew Doughty is now available, making the Maple Leafs the lucky winner, swooping him up at pick number 3. Other noticeable moves feature the Blue Jackets selecting Zach Bogosian, the Blackhawks picking Josh Bailey, the Senators taking Luke Shen, the LA Kings picking both Colin Wilson and Nikita Filatov, and the Flyers snag Erik Karlsson, forming a core of stars that now features Showtime and EK, making them a official threat out east. Other noticeable picks feature Eberle to Washington and Jacob Markstrom to St. Louis, meaning Jake Allen goes to Columbus. I know we haven't talked about free agency, so assume everything went the same up to this point, but the big name on the market this year is Marian Gaborik. This guy would change any team into a massive contender. In real life, he signs with the Rangers, but we say, since New York hasn't really shined in our timeline, that Gaborik heads out to Vancouver, making them look dangerous, even with Corey Schneider in net. The Panthers look determined to make it back to the final with their potent offense, and the West looks to change as the Blackhawks look ready to finally compete, and the Canucks look stacked with a line of the Sedins and Gaborik. The East has the Thrashers looking like heavy favorites, along with the Hurricanes and Sabres in the mix. This season, the Blackhawks don't begin their dynasty, but they're still pretty solid, and the Flyers are pretty meh. So this season, we say 2 teams finally get over the hump. Coming out of the West will be the Vancouver Canucks, as their first line will dominate and is a force to be reckoned with. They'll be facing Bobby Lou, Alex Ovechkin, and the Florida Panthers. And in the end, this comes down to goaltending, as both teams evenly match up against one another. But ultimately, the Florida Panthers get things done, and Ovechkin gets the cup 9 years before he does in real life. This is where our timeline ends. After this, we assume the Atlanta Thrashers begin their own reign of terror eventually as the Winnipeg Jets and win a title of their own. The Panthers begin to get older with age, and the former stars burn out, while Ovechkin leads a new, younger group of players to success. The Capitals and Blackhawks are still a few pieces away from success and may finally get over the hump. And with the Sabres and Sidney Crosby eventually suffering the fate of poor management by the Sabres, the Philadelphia Flyers look to compete with the Thrashers in the East. It's always fun looking back at the past and going over the what-ifs. You can see just how one little move can impact the entire league and its future for years to come. Ovechkin on the Panthers would have been huge, and if the Panthers actually pulled that off, then perhaps maybe we see more teams in the future try to do the same thing, causing eventually complete chaos. But as we've learned today, all it takes is one prospect, trade, or free agent signing to alter the entire NHL for better or for worse.